Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL Podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly.
Well, welcome back to the DCL Podcast, your podcast to cruise a little smarter. I'm your host, Lake, and I am flying solo for this episode. Christy is living her best life on the Treasure, recovering after a successful dopey for both of us. But we are not here to discuss either of those things. We are here to talk about a pretty exciting sailing, talking about the magic, which I feel like magic sailings have become few and far between for us discussing, which makes me excited because the magic has such a special place in my heart. It's such a wonderful little ship there. And we finally have an announcement that we are getting what we're considering the replacements for those ships, which we will definitely have a separate news show on coming up. But to discuss this sailing, we would like to welcome our guest to the show, Trevor Cheltsaney. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, very excited to discuss this one. Again, don't get to talk about the magic a whole lot right now, so this is exciting. And we also get to talk about a pretty exciting port-heavy itinerary. Why don't you tell our guest what sailing this was?
Yeah.
So it was actually one of our bucket list cruises. It was a 7-night Southern Caribbean sailing out of Puerto Rico. So we hit St. Kitts, St. Lucia, Barbados, Antigua, and Dominica, and then back to San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Awesome. And why don't you tell our guests a little bit about your Disney and Disney cruising background while we are at the beginning here?
Yeah, so this is our third cruise. We've done Eastern, Western, and now Southern. So we have kind of tried to hit a bunch of different ships. And so we've done the Fantasy twice, and then we just did the Magic. And looking to go forward on the Wish, I think, maybe this coming February. So we have cruised a few times, but Disney cruise, I think, with the parks and all. So
We honeymooned in Disney, so we've been
11 years. Yeah. 11 years we've been, kind of traveling the Disney world.
Awesome. Well, we have a lot to get into here with a lot of ports. Before that even begins, we have to get to this port. And this Southern Caribbean, as most Southern Caribbeans, starts out of San Juan. So when you booked this sailing, what was kind of your process for how you were planning to get to San Juan? And did you do anything pre-stay?
Yeah, we stayed in Puerto Rico one day prior to the sailing because just worried about, getting there and things like that and making sure that if you miss this ship, it's not going to be easy. And so we went a day in early. Flights are typically we arrived really late that night. And when you arrive in Puerto Rico, there's a ton of taxis and things around. And that's how we got to our preferred hotel that we stayed in. And we just followed along with a lot of the Disney cruise guests and where they were staying. We all stayed kind of at that same resort and hotel. So we got to see a lot of people that was, heading in that morning.
Our entire hotel was probably Disney cruise. So we were at the Hyatt Place is where we stayed. So it's like 20 minutes from the airport, maybe 5 minutes from the port. Like we could actually see the magic from our room in the morning.
Yeah, it was really cool. So we booked the cruise first because we knew the space was limited. And then I kind of worried about flights throughout the year. It was a year-long booking that we had. So I booked the cruise first and then looked into flights from where we are, which is in a little small town in South Carolina.
Yeah, I currently have tracking on for my sailing that we have booked right now, waiting for the best time to book that. Now, you mentioned being able to communicate with other cruise members. Did you do that through the Facebook groups?
Yes, always. That is the best way to communicate. We always go through our sailings. Like when you book a cruise, go online, look up your cruise dates, and typically there's a group that someone has started and, everybody will kind of put in like, that's where you find your fish extenders, where people are staying.
Or ad drops for
different
activities or like port excursions.
Yeah.
You have to get to know other people. Like if you've got, young kids or like teenagers, like, hey, I've got a 14-year-old who is worried about traveling by himself. It's a good way to kind of get to know people you're going to be, spending next 7 or 8 days with.
Yeah, always a ton of great information on those Facebook groups. You can always find them just by searching your ship and sailing date. My caveat for the Facebook groups, especially if you're a first-time sailor, is don't get bogged down in the you have to do everything.
Amen.
Because people will post, should I do this? Should I do that? And everyone's like, yes, can't miss this, can't miss that.
Yes.
It is okay to choose your own adventure and do what sounds appealing to you.
Agreed. Yeah, we are huge on that. Like, we don't think we have to do every excursion. This cruise, we did kind of do some excursions with Disney Cruise Line, and then some days that we took and we got off the ship and found our own little tour. So
Yeah,
we experienced both.
King and queen of winging it.
And that is A-okay. We will definitely get into that. While we are still talking about booking the cruise, what to book, other than port excursions, what things on board did you pre-book?
I did a whiskey tasting class, night one. She did a massage. That's kind of her consistent thing. And then we always like to do the mixology classes. That one, we didn't get a second mixology class until like 4 or 5 days before.
We even got on
Somebody in the Facebook group posted like, hey, I'm dropping, several of these classes. So we were able to grab another spot for that class.
And then we also have a 7-year-old daughter, and she does the princesses.
The princess gathering.
The princess gathering is typically on every ship at one of the days or 2 of the days. And so those are bookings that you have to book advance in order, if you have younger ones, to be able to see those princesses all at one time.
Yeah, lots that you can definitely pre-book there. Well, why don't we go ahead and get on board? What was the embarkation process like going out of San Juan? We can always hear kind of some mixed reviews here, especially when it comes to the non-Disney stationed ports like Port Canaveral and Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, so we have always cruised out of Canaveral, which is Disney's main port, and it is gorgeous. Everything is so flawless. So
there's Mickey heads you walk through.
What we're used to. So San Juan was, like, when we were there in early November, their main cruise, so they have 2 terminals. So they have one that is for like temporary stops, and they have one that is for like embarkation and debarkation. So we were at the main one, and they're renovating it, and they're going to have a whole new terminal. But this time, it was basically like an airplane hangar, like a warehouse. Shell. They had a couple of the Disney marketing stuff, but it was very much bare bones. And if it wasn't our first crew, I would have been super sketched out to hopping out of the car and having some random guy grab your bags like, hey, we'll see you on the ship. And they're not in Disney clothes, they just have name tags. But yeah, if it was your first cruise, I could see it would be very, very much unnerving.
Yes.
We had no issues, but
and not a lot of people, because the cruise was very small.
It's on the Magic.
So it's the smallest ship. Really, there's not a lot of people. You're not like fighting lines like you do at the typical Port Canaveral port.
Yeah, the wait was substantial. There was no wait.
Yeah, there's no way. But you also don't walk through a magical Mickey head to get onto the cruise ship. You just go up a stairs. So.
Well, sometimes we need to do what's necessary to get to some of these more interesting ports. Well, this is your first time on the Magic, and it sounds like your first time on a Magic class ship as well, which is a little bit different. What was it like boarding her for the first time?
So because we're out of Puerto Rico, we had to come up like the gangway versus coming in on deck 3. So we completely missed the walking onto the main deck on 3 and getting announced. And so if it was our first cruise, I feel like you would have missed out on that. So that was odd.
But there was people who didn't know about that.
And so they were really excited about it, and they didn't get it. I put 2 and 2 together. I was like, we came on deck 1, they're not going to announce us on deck 1. But it was a lot smaller than the Fantasy, which is a much larger ship. And honestly, we're so used to the Fantasy. We just got off the Fantasy in mid-January this year, or this past year. It probably took us a day or 2 to kind of get our bearings because we're so used to the Dream class ships.
I kept having to look at the floor and this way the starters were facing because I would just get so lost on the ship. I just couldn't get myself turned around.
Well, we get on board. What is a normal embarkation day for our family? Are we going right to lunch right away? And where would that be?
So, yeah, we typically get on like with as little bags as possible. We try to check as many bags as we can. And then we head to Cabanas. So go to Cabanas, try to grab a quick lunch, and depending on either what time our room gets ready or if we have muster drill, we try to go to the pool for a little bit. And this one we had a really early muster drill, so we didn't get to do anything until after that.
We did do, there's a ton of raffles going on throughout the lobby, and so I signed up for the spa day, and I can get into that, a little later, but essentially you will write your name down at Cabanas, and it's all offered in kind of the lobby of the Cabanas area. And you can, write your name down, and there's different kind of prizes that you can win. And I ended up luckily winning one of those. So we were able to kind of enjoy lunch and just kind of meet some of the people that we met through Facebook. We saw them eating that day, and it's always really good food when you get on the ship too. Like the first day, I feel like.
Yeah, first day food's always, it hits different.
It hits different.
We love that first day lunch on board. I believe we forgot to mention that it was you two as well as your 6-year-old daughter who sailed with you. What kind of stateroom did you book, and how were those accommodations for your family?
Yeah, so we booked an inside stateroom on this one. We're not super picky on rooms. Usually, like for this one, we just wanted to get on the ship. We weren't really concerned with, a window or a balcony. So we just had an inside stateroom. We were specific on where we were. We were dead set in the middle of the ship. Our sailing in January was super, super rough. So she was like, nope, we're going to go in the middle. So we were on deck 6 in the middle, but on an interior stateroom, which for us, it's not a big deal. It's more about the itinerary. It was such a busy itinerary. We realistically were very, very rarely in the room.
Yeah, definitely plenty to keep you out of your stateroom on this one. Well, we're going to stick with the ship here for just a little bit and discuss some of the main highlights of sailing on the Magic, and then we will get into the ports. So why don't we start by diving into entertainment and discussing what we did on board the ship. You did mention you had some items pre-booked. Why don't we go into that?
Yeah, so night one, I did the whiskey tasting, and it was like 10:50. It was late.
Super late at night, yeah.
Yeah, so I did that. She doesn't drink whiskey, so I don't even know what she did. But yeah, Hadley, our daughter, was in kids club, and we pretty much can't get her out of there once she's in kids club. She explored the ship for a little bit, and eventually came up to join in the class just to hang out.
They ended up letting me just sit with him in the whiskey class. If you ask the instructor of the whiskey, hey, my significant other or my other person that you're sailing with didn't do the class, but they were just wanting to come and sit with us. So I actually, even though I don't like whiskey, I got to learn a lot about it. And he was so
very
nice.
Entertaining. So even if you're not drinking, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, he was, and he even accommodated me in it. And that was asking, hey, do you want to try anything? And I was like, no.
Yeah.
But he was really awesome. And we did the whiskey tasting. We did the mixology class, which we always highly recommend on every cruise sailing because they're always different. And it's according to where you're traveling to.
Each ship has it set up a little bit different.
Yes. And so we did a mixology class with the both of us, which was a lot of fun. And then we just did meeting the princesses for our 6-year-old, which was fantastic. She got to meet one of her favorites that you actually don't see on any other ship.
Yeah, she's a big Ariel fan, and she's not on the Fantasy. So every time we go on the Fantasy, she wants to see Ariel, but she's not there. So.
Only on the Magic. So.
Awesome. Did we do any other entertainment like trivias or any of the nighttime shows or special entertainment that wasn't the main shows?
Yes, we are reigning trivia winners. Yeah. So we have the fun, plastic medals that they give you.
Trivia medals. We won. We teamed up with a random couple that we bumped into.
Yeah.
And won trivia with them. And then we tried to do Star Wars trivia. I think we got second or third. So no medal, but it was still a lot of fun.
And then we did this Encanto sing-along, and it's only offered on the sailing. And we got to meet Maribel and Bruno.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, we do a lot of the onboard activities when we are.
Oh, we did.
All the shows.
We did another game show with, the kids did it, and that was a lot of fun. She won some prizes there, too.
Yeah.
With the Encanto show, we've talked about this one time, and I know it's super coveted and kind of rare. Did that show up on the app, and did you have to pre-book that in any sort of way?
It did show up on the app.
It did show up on the app, but you don't have to pre-book it. And I will be honest, there was maybe 10 of us in there, and we got to have a full interaction with Maribel and Bruno, and the kids get to get up and dance with them.
Yeah, I think they called it the Encanto dance party. So a lot of people kind of overlooked it. It was in the middle of the day, and we knew we wanted to do it. And one of the cast members, she didn't specifically say that Bruno and Mirabel were going to be there. She goes, "There might be some surprise characters. That's all I can tell you." Which, if you can put two and two together, you could probably figure out who it's going to be. So we went. Our daughter went, danced, made some crafts. And then Bruno and Mirabel came out, and of course, all the kids lose it. Most of the parents did as well. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It was really cool.
Yeah, we didn't have to pre-book it because it really was not crowded at all.
Yeah, and the ship is so small that when you're walking around, you can kind of see what activities are going on in those different halls. And so we actually, I think, walked by it and was just like, you know what, we're free right now. Let's just walk in and do it. So you walk in and you get to sit in these chairs, and they had the kids build butterflies while they waited for the show to start. So it was really cool.
Sounds awesome. Well, why don't we take it into the nighttime entertainment? Did we see any of the shows on board?
Yeah.
All
three.
Was it 3 of them? Yeah, all 3 of them. There was 3 special videos we had not seen before because they are different than any of the other cruise ships. I'll have to think about which ones they were now.
Should have had Tangled.
Yep, Tangled. Is it Disney Dreams?
Disney, that's like the specialty one on the last day that you watch, and a lot of the characters come out then.
And Cinderella Twice Charmed.
Twice Charmed.
That's it. So we got to see all 3 of those shows. The Cinderella was fantastic. Tangled is great as always because one of your dining options is going to be with Tangled, and so you kind of get multiple interactions with her. And so you kind of really get to feel that connection because you've seen her throughout the ship and at dinner. And then the last Disney Dreams show, we obviously don't want to ruin it, but it's just, you get to see so many characters and
it really is fantastic. Disney doesn't mess with their Broadway style entertainment options. Yeah, our very first cruise, we skipped the first night, and we realized very quickly that was a mistake. So we've always made sure, even if we've seen the show, we still always come back and get it.
Yes.
So yeah, definitely don't miss it.
Well, we've hit entertainment as well as some of our booked activities. Is there anything else that your family likes to do on board the ship to spend your time?
Always the pool. I feel like pools are great options. One of the things I would say with this ship being a little bit smaller, the pool's a lot smaller. So, we didn't spend as much time there, but they do have the drop slide that everyone was, excited.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Aqua Dunk.
Hadley was like an inch too short. So we're going back on the Magic again in September. So hopefully she grows a little bit because she wanted to do it. But we spent most of our time with her in the splash bed on the back of the ship. And yeah, we couldn't.
And there's hidden cabanas back there. So parents, please go up there because it's like shaded options hidden at the top on the top deck. And so you can get the shade, but also kind of have your own little spot. It's not as loud. It's great to reapply sunscreen for your children and things like that.
So talking about your 6-year-old a little bit more, you did mention that she utilized the kids club. Does she do pretty good in the kids club? Did she spend a lot of time in there on this sailing?
She spends every minute we're on the ship that she can. She will go in there and will not come out until midnight.
Yeah.
So sometimes we go to our room and get ready for bed and wait till midnight because we will go and try to get her. And she's shaking her hands, no, at us. And she loves it in there. She meets a ton of characters. So characters come in random for the kids.
Makes lots of friends, which helps because then she sees, kids. We saw a kid at the airport on the way home. She's like, hey, that's my friend from school. And I was like, what are you talking about? There's no way. She goes, no, from the Disney school. I was like, just talking about kids club.
Yeah. So, and we almost got stopped in the airport because she's like, no, I want to. And she's flying back to England. And we're like, Hadley, you cannot go with them.
Yeah. We're trying to hang out with each other in the TSA line. No, you guys stay in your line. Think about that stuff.
The Disney school. I love that so much. Well, why don't we go ahead and move towards dining? Why don't you give us a little, some highlights from your dining, your favorite restaurant on board, as well as your favorite meal, and then if you had any kind of misses during your dining as well.
Oh, misses. Well, so our first night, we did have Tangled, which was so great, but anytime you have 3 or less people in your party, it's not guaranteed that you're going to be sitting by yourself. So we had another family that was supposed to be joining us, but they actually never came. So they ended up giving us dining in the very front of the Tangled.
Yeah, so that was really the only mix up. We're not really sure what happened. They called us either the next day or after that night. They're like, hey, so you got sat at this table. I'm like, how was dinner? I'm like, it's fine. I guess we didn't have any specific issues. Well, the table that you got sat at really needs to have 6 people. You guys only have 3. So we're going to move you to a different table. And we're like, okay, well, the problem is we're going to switch your service staff. So on night 1, we really hadn't specifically connected with our service staff. So we didn't really miss out on anything.
Yeah.
So that was the only really mishap. It wasn't It wasn't bad. It was just odd. We've never had that. But it's also our first time on the Magic. I know that the dining setup is a little different than the Fantasy. So they moved us there. But I think my favorite restaurant was Rapunzel's.
Yeah, I would say my favorite restaurant was Rapunzel's as well. Just the food options. I did feel like there was a lot of like seafood forward options.
I don't know if it was this sailing or what.
Yeah. So, and I'm not a seafood eater, but there's always like, an option for like chicken or steak or whatever. So,
Yeah, lobster night is still my
lobster
favorite.
night's still a thing.
That's definitely my highlight as far as like the dining options go.
Yeah.
And your first time on a Magic class ship, just turning it towards Animator's palette a bit, what did you think of that design of the restaurant versus the Fantasy and the Dreams Animator's palette?
I missed Crush.
Yeah. We're so accustomed to with Crush interacting with you. Now we still had. I mean, it's still fun.
Still an amazing.
Yeah, it's still. But to have Sorcerer Mickey came out, which didn't ever happen on the Dream class ships. So
yeah, we never saw a character on the other ship. And so
like
seeing
dining.
multiple characters and multiple of the dining options this trip was really a great highlight and add, to the trip and for our daughter, because we had no idea. So we were just as surprised. So we couldn't, spoil it for her. And she was just like, you didn't tell me Mickey was coming. And so it was really cool just to see the different characters during our dining.
Yeah, I really love that Animator's palette version, just with the restaurant changing colors through it, and then even the servers' outfits going from black and white to color.
Oh, yeah. So I like the food at Animator's palette.
Yeah.
It's good.
Any other notes on dining?
My all-time favorite dessert on Disney cruises is still the opera cake. I don't ever get it when we're home because, like, to me, like it's one of those connected memories. Like, the only time I'll get it is on a ship. So yeah, it is hands down my favorite dessert.
So he'll order like 2.
Yeah.
And the server's like, you want 2? He's like, yeah, I want 2.
Yeah, keep them coming.
And that is A-okay. You can make what you will on a Disney cruise. I think everyone has that special meal that they could easily make at home or figure out how to make. But it's more special when you're waiting for it on your next Disney cruise.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think his secondary is buffalo chicken wings late at night. He's like ordering 3 orders of room service at midnight because
calories don't count at Disney.
Yes. So,
well, is there anything else on board the ship we did that you'd like to discuss before we move towards the ports, or anything about the Magic?
I would just say that enjoy what you can while you're on it, because it is such a port heavy cruise. When you're on the ship, utilize the app and go and see what little things are going on in those ballrooms, because we slipped into a really amazing opportunities in seeing Encanto and doing those different kinds of trivias. There is a dual piano bar, so we got to see piano players playing, and so
there's so many fun options that I feel like it was such a port heavy trip for us. It was really hard for us to experience everything. So like, even if we were to repeat a sailing on the Magic or any of these ships, there's still so much to do that it still feels like it's a completely different trip.
Yeah.
Well, we will leave the Magic with one last question. What was like a highlight location on the ship for you?
I liked O'Gill's because it was so much larger than the Fantasy, and I love the Fantasy. That is my favorite ship. But O'Gill's on the Magic to me was just a little bit better because it doesn't feel so cool. It doesn't feel so. It felt more like we were on there for a bunch of football games, so we were able to sit down and watch that. You didn't feel like you were so cramped. So I did like O'Gill's the Magic.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a nice big space, and I believe they also have the chess tables and the gaming tables on the other end, right?
There.
Yeah, and when we were in there, it was not overly crowded every time, and so I think it's almost like a hidden gem, because on that ship it is kind of navigating and it's tucked away, and so we were able to kind of enjoy some time while our daughter stayed in Kids Club the whole time.
Awesome. Love it. Well, we're going to turn towards the ports. This is a Southern Caribbean sailing, as we mentioned. So we've got St. Kitts, St. Lucia, Barbados, Dominica, and Antigua to talk about. We'll start with your first day, St. Kitts. What did we have planned for this day, and how did we book that? And then tell us how your day went.
So we had nothing on this one. So we started the week off just winging it. With our trip, it was very early port arrival, was very late. I guess embarkation time. So we had a ton of time at port, but we were there very, very early. So we kind of walked around the port area for a little bit. And of course, the second you sit on the ship, you're probably getting asked by 50 different taxi drivers like, hey, do you want a tour? Do you want to go to these beaches? Do you want to go here? And the monkeys, they're trying to throw monkeys at you so fast. And if you don't want to pay for a picture, don't let them put the monkey on you. We said no probably 100 times. And eventually, a guy
You're going to be walking around ducking the whole time in port.
We kind of waited, and the guy was like, hey, look, I can give you, like, you want to go to the beaches or you want to do like a sightseeing tour? Like, it's, once you're on board, like all you can drink or whatever. And I was like, you know what, we'll do that. We'll go to the beach later. We knew we had several other excursions that we were going to hit a beach. So we weren't really trying to hit a beach, but if we hit one, we were fine with it. So we ended up, going with this company, like the safari buses and a couple other couples. And it ended up being probably one of the best excursions that we did. They took us all around the island of St. Kitts, some really cool spots that I feel like most people wouldn't normally see. And we went to see like old sugar mill plantation. We saw like their
rum,
the first rum
distillery in St. Kitts.
Got to try some rum while we were there. It took us to the top of like one of the tallest peaks where the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean intersect. And the guy was great. Lots of tips and stuff about stuff, but it was awesome.
His name was Mr. Kent.
Yeah, Mr. Kent. He was fantastic. So, and we completely just were winging it on this one, and it worked out really well. We ended up skipping the beach at the end of it because it was such a long day. And it's like, hey, I can still drop you guys at the beach. You still have 2 hours. We were so just wiped out. So we went back to the ship early. Yeah.
So talking just a little bit more about finding this and booking this,
yeah.
Most people, your deepest level of comfort is let me book it through DCL.
Yes.
And then most people branch out, okay, maybe I'll try Viator. But outside of maybe booking like Alaska, where you're already in the States and you know your way around, the language for the most part, not a lot of people would be brave enough to leave the ship and walk up to a stall and book a tour. Like, what was it about this vendor that kind of gave you the confidence to be like, yeah, this is what we feel comfortable doing. This is what we want to do.
So as crazy as it sounds too, it wasn't even like somebody in a little
He was just wearing a polo.
He was just wearing a polo.
Just said St. Kitts tour.
St. Kitts tour.
I guess that was good enough for us. I don't know.
But we were just talking to him, and we didn't have the intentions on booking with him initially, but he was talking to us about the island, which gave us comfort in him.
It wasn't really pushy. Like, he was being helpful without being pushy, so I guess it gave us good enough vibes.
And also getting those bookings when you get off the ship, you end up saving a lot of money because we were able to say,
$40,
we'll give you $40 to let us like get on the safari bus. And you're waiting in this line with a bunch of other people that are going onto these buses to get the same tour. So it was just, we started talking to the people that lived there and found comfort. And once we found comfort and like, oh, he was really nice with our daughter. And he was like, are you excited? And kind of had that interaction with her. And so we felt like we felt comfort in him. And then that's when we decided to go ahead and move forward.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of risk with something like that. But our advice would be just use your common sense. Like if a situation feels wrong, then it probably is.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it was your first time cruising, I probably wouldn't recommend it. We've cruised and traveled a bunch that I can kind of feel like I can get a good feel for situation, and same thing with her. If either one of us gets bad vibes from somebody, we'll speak up.
Awesome. I do appreciate you elaborating on that. Again, not a lot of people would be brave enough to do that at all. And that's not like a judgment situation. I just think that's genuinely, a very interesting way to find what you said was one of your better tours of the trip.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate you elaborating for our listeners here. Anything else on St. Kitts before we move on to St. Lucia?
I mean, it was such a welcoming island. And I think we were just really happy that we were able to enjoy their land. And they were it was people on the side of the road. We ended up eating like bread out of a steel can that he was frying on the side of the road. Don't suggest that though, because don't eat food from the side of the road unless you feel like
he was grilling up lobsters and a bunch of other stuff. And he said he caught a lot of fish and stuff that morning, which it could or couldn't be. I don't know.
And he was just giving it away to us for free, which again I don't suggest.
Yeah, one of the ladies on our trip, she ate 2 lobsters while she was there.
Oh my goodness, they were huge.
I feel like she was fine.
Yeah, she was fine.
So yeah, you could do it. We didn't, but
I did eat the bread.
To each their own, yeah.
What a fascinating and interesting day on St. Kitts.
Yeah, we started off with a bang.
I absolutely love it, though. Well, let's move towards St. Lucia here. What did we have planned for this day?
So St. Lucia was another day that we kind of we were winging it. But since we didn't do a beach on day one, we're like, you know what, we're going to do a beach on day two. There's lots of good beaches. So again, we walked up to a street vendor. I was like, hey, you want to go to a beach? Where do you want to go? And I had done enough research. I kind of knew where I wanted to go, but I wanted to get their opinion. So we ended up going to Pigeon Point, which is one of the further points, but it's actually just past one of the Sandals resorts. So I was like, you know what? It's close enough to something real. If, we get into a bad situation, it's close. Like Sandals is a very, world-renowned resort. Like I can get help if I need to. So we hopped in a little bus. This was the only time that we kind of got sketched out with the roadside tour guide. So he took us out to Pigeon Point, and he wasn't very happy to take us to Pigeon Point. There was another family. So there was another family with us on the bus to start with. They took them to the beach. It was like 5 minutes from the port. We didn't want to go there because we like to have a more secluded beach that's not overpopulated and tons of vendors. So we wanted Pigeon Point because it was further. But the problem was it was on the other side of the island, and he didn't want to take us that far. And he told us that he didn't want to take us that far in the van. And I was like, you know what? This was not great. Because the entire ride out there, he told us how angry he was with us. I was like, we're not going to get picked up. So he dropped us off out there. He goes, here's your receipt. You need this when I come get you. So we go to the beach and everything's fine. And then a guy taps me on my shoulder like 30 minutes later. And he goes, hey, your driver's not coming to get you. And I was like, yeah, I was afraid of that. What do I do? And he goes, we're going to call you a different guy. I was like, okay, that family over there, you're going to go home with them. I was like, oh, that's really sketchy. But okay, and we're here now, so we're stuck. So I was like, I went to go talk to him. I was like, look, don't let us get stuck out here. Can you just promise us that we're going to come back? He goes, I'll let you know when it's time to come get you. And so we told him like at 1:45.
Yeah.
And then at 1:45, he goes, hey man, your car's here. It's time to go. So it ended up working out. We had a nice day at the beach. Could have been bad, but it was okay.
Once again, so fascinated. I mean, getting off and getting a taxi to the beach is not that uncommon. An interesting interaction with your cab driver for sure.
But once you get to the island, I feel like the islanders are so grateful for you being there because you're spending money on their island and it's in return helping them. And we learned a lot about the islands and how they're really hurting. And so they rely so much on tourism. And so they were so good. Like he literally sat behind us at the beach and watched us.
Yeah, watched our stuff while
we took our 6-year-old swimming. I mean, just really made us feel safe when we were at that beach.
Told us, where to order food, where not to order food. So yeah, there was still stuff there. There was a restaurant there. There's, vendors walking around like the angelfish at a Sawgrass.
Yeah.
So yeah, once we were there, like the beach was great and the vibes were fine once we were there. The one driver just wasn't happy.
And we got to see a rock that was full of pigeon poop.
That's why they call it Pigeon Point.
That's why they call it Pigeon Point.
Okay, and discussing, we kind of just called him this guy that was at the beach. Was he just like a vendor or like a taxi coordinator?
No, he was. It's locals and they sit on the beach and they will, I think maybe they get paid to kind of find
he rents out the beach chair. So like if you go to the beach on some of these places, it's like $10 or $20 for a beach chair. He's one of those guys that like would monitor and sell the beach chairs. So in some capacity, he worked for somebody renting out beach chairs at this, remote beach at Pigeon Point. Who he worked for specifically, we don't really know, but he was awesome.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was shirtless, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, just some local guy.
I mean, that's really great for someone to, go that far to take care of you, make sure you got back to the ship after your cab driver kind of abandoned you.
Yeah, and we ended up tipping him. Like when we left the island, we were like, hey, thanks so much for like watching after us. And so
yeah, he was like, yeah, no problem. I just want to make sure you guys get home okay. So yeah, they thrive on tourism. They don't really want to do anything bad because if they do something bad, people aren't going to want to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in the day and age of the internet saying, hey, don't go here. This was my interaction with the people. You really don't want to kill your sources of income by any means. Anything else on St. Lucia before we move on?
I think that was it.
Yeah.
Well, again, another fascinating adventure on your sailing here. But let's move on to Barbados. What did we have booked for this day?
Oh, we actually had a booking
through DCL.
DCL.
So this one, we did the catamaran, snorkeling, and like, turtle sightseeing adventure. So it was 2 stops on a catamaran, and then like for snorkeling, and then they would stop for lunch at a beach at the very end of it. And this was the one that we were probably the most excited about that we had booked because We thought that our daughter was going to like it, but was not a fan of the snorkeling. Loved the catamaran, loved swimming around, but didn't love snorkeling.
And they feed you on the catamaran too. So once you book this excursion, it was nice because we didn't have to worry about food that day. They supplied all you can drink. Everything's rum punch on St. Lucia, St. Kitts, Barbados, Antigua. All of it is rum punch. and
then whatever local beer, but they're all basically.
Yeah, and a lager. But so once you got on the catamaran, it was kind of all covered. So we didn't have to worry about, like any of those things. But the snorkeling was not our 6-year-old's biggest fan. They were really accommodating to her. They gave her like a pool noodle to float around instead of trying to use the snorkel mask.
Yeah, and the lifeguard kept checking on her. He's like, "Hey, Hadley, you okay? Hadley, you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm good."
Yeah, so, and you would hear him across the water, and he would be like, Hadley, because she was like one of the only smaller ones on the catamaran.
Yeah, she was definitely the youngest one.
Yeah.
But the company that we went through DCL, but the company that we went with was Tiami Cruises, and everybody was fantastic.
Yes, highly recommend Tiami Cruises. If you're going to Barbados, do it. It's worth it.
What was the name of that excursion again through DCL, in case our listeners want to try to find that one?
It was the turtle sightseeing and snorkeling adventure, like on the catamaran. So there's a couple of them. I can't remember the exact code. Yeah, it's pretty easy to find. It's the only one with the turtle sightseeing and snorkeling.
Yep. And it usually will say the company is through.
Yeah, it was Tiami.
Awesome. Well, sounds like another successful day here in Barbados. Any other thoughts on that island?
You do get a little bit of beach time. So that was really nice because they do, just for anybody with littles, they will pull over in the middle of the water. So they give you a pool noodle to swim to land. But there was a bunch of like sea glass. They take you to this private beach. So we got to see a bunch of like natural sea glass. And it was just absolutely gorgeous. And they would tell you like where shipwrecks happened or things like that. So we got this.
It ended up being a beautiful day. It started raining for us. Like when we left the port, like the first, maybe 10, 20 minutes on the catamaran, it was raining, and then it cleared up and got gorgeous.
Yeah.
So we got really, really lucky with the weather this cruise because it was hurricane season. So yeah, we were very fortunate.
Well, we still have 2 more ports because we are port to port to port to port to port, and then a sea day here. So what did we have planned in Dominica?
Another tour.
So this was another DCL tour that I booked. No, I did not really tell them. So we went hiking, sightseeing on this one. It ended up being really cool, but we're all in flip-flops, and I did not tell her it was hiking. So it was
2 mountain hikes, 2 different mountains.
So the first one we did the Emerald Pool.
Yeah.
And the second one we did Trafalgar Falls. Both of those were absolutely gorgeous.
It was so cool. It was the coolest.
Yeah, the half-mile hike through the rainforest in flip-flops, which was not great planning on my part. She's like, "You didn't tell me we were hiking." I was like, "I didn't really read it. It just looked fun."
And they only give you 15 minutes to make it to the falls.
Yeah, so you got to walk briskly.
Because you have to get up to the falls, enjoy it for a minute, and then walk back to get back onto the bus. So it was very time sensitive because it took so long to get to those locations.
Yeah, it was very remote, but it was beautiful. Once again, the weather was nice. The water was incredibly cold. For how warm it was outside, the water was freezing.
But it was crystal clear. It was the most crystal clear water you will ever see. And our tour guide told us that it technically is drinking water. She was like, "You can drink this as long as people aren't swimming in it because it's so just clean." It was so pretty. It was gorgeous.
And
what was the level of hiking? Now you mentioned flip-flops was maybe not the right call. Was it still a pretty easy hike? It sounds like you were able to navigate it. And what would you have recommended? Would tennis shoes have been enough? Or would this have, were real hiking shoes really what you would have preferred?
Yeah, I would say flip-flops worked. Okay, so you can flip-flop it. It's all stairs, but it's natural made stairs. Yeah. It's a path made of stairs. It's rocks and it's wood stairs. So
you definitely have to be ambulatory. If you're in a wheelchair or needed a walker.
Yes. We had several guests with us that had knee issues and couldn't make it up to the falls. So we kind of passed them on the way up and then passed them on the way back. But if you're able to walk and walk some stairs, I would say 200 stairs.
Yeah, it's doable. I mean, we took our 6-year-old, and she keeps saying I've got little legs. So she was fine. She complained a little bit, but once we got there, she was okay. Probably the more stressful too was Trafalgar Falls because you have to hike up to it. But there's a path of sorts. It's just, roots and rocks.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else on Dominica or this tour?
I think to the falls, I would say they were great about utilizing the time and making the time go by as you were going up because it took, I don't know, probably an hour to get to these falls. And so they showed us a lot of their fruits and sources of food come from the land, and they showed us some of the coolest trees. We got to see coffee bean trees, and they were telling us about how it used to be a sugar made area. They were strictly sugar producers, and then
with the
tourism came in and took over all of their sugar business, and so now they solemnly rely on tourism as income for the island.
The tour was really cool. She did a great job of talking about things between stops because we had technically 3 stops. Our last stop was the overlook over downtown. You can see the ship in the background. Really, really cool picture. But they do it the people of Dominica do such a phenomenal job of not wasting any resource because it's very naturally beautiful country. So everything that there is based off of ecotourism versus St. Lucia and St. Kitts are more beaches. It's all the rainforest and the natural beauty there, and they don't waste any of their natural resources. They're very big on
even tree bark. And I can't tell you about the tree bark, but you should look up tree bark on Dominica, and I'm sure some fans will enjoy it.
I can only imagine where that is going. Well, it sounds like another really successful tour, though. Now, moving into Antigua, you are on your 5th port day in a row. Before we even get into what we did, how are you feeling?
Oh,
we were late getting off the ship.
Yeah, we slept in.
We
found a beach bar when we first got off the ship to try to get Wi-Fi. So we could call family hey, here's where we're at because we were just completely wiped. We were so exhausted
so tired. We had no port excursion with DCL at this point because we didn't know how it would go as far as having port with a 6-year-old.
Yeah, we contemplated staying on the ship at this point, but we were we're going to at least get off and walk around the downtown area, kind of the port area to see because once again, you're pulling into these ports and it's beautiful. Every single port is just stunning. So we'll get off for a little bit. But once again, we were winging it on this one. We were walking around the shops and the driver approached us and we're hey, we're good right now. He goes, well, if you want to go, I can take you here. Just let me know. He goes, my name's Frank. And if you want to go, I'll come back and, I'll wait for you. And then she's like, what, I'll make you a deal. Give us 15 minutes. Let us shop for a little bit and I'll come find you. So we're walking around and sure enough, Frank sees us and he goes, Miss Quinn, are you ready to go? And she's like, well, I guess we're going with him now because he has waited for us this entire time.
Yeah, he waited for us the whole time. And so Mr. Frank, he was so great. And
probably the best tour guide we had out of the...
Yeah, he took us by his own personal home.
Yeah.
And showed us the banana trees that he was growing in his yard. And
took us by his uncle's house. Coffee beans. And we went out to Fort James Beach. So we asked him for recommendations because we did zero research for Antigua because we didn't know what we were going to feel like. So we're like, hey, where do you want to go? And he asked us, what do you want to do? Do you want a beach that has restaurants and shops and things like that? Or do you want to go to a place that you're probably going to be by yourself? Well, the second one sounds great. He took us to Fort James Beach, which was on the further side of the island. He was happy to take us there because it was his suggestion. So we get out there. We are the only people on this beach.
We had an entire beach to ourselves.
It was wild. And the beach is probably, 1.5 miles, 2 miles long.
Yeah. White sand, not footprints in the sand, nothing.
There's just a little beach bar called Miller's on the beach. And the family that runs that bar was incredible. They were phenomenal. They were the nicest people when we were waiting on our car to come back.
They cooked
us food, the best jerk chicken we have ever had. And they sat there and they played with our daughter while we were waiting. The only thing that I wish we would have done was got our driver's phone number. We told him at 3:30 is what time.
Come back and pick us up at this time.
And at 1:30 we were done because we'd been there by ourselves for a couple hours. And I asked the lady at the restaurant, the bar, and I was like, hey, do you know her address? She goes, oh yeah, that's Frank. I was like, oh great, what's Frank's number? She goes, well, I don't know.
But he lives right there.
Yeah, we saw his house, and she's like, I don't know his number. What time did you tell him to get back here? I was like, we said 3:30, but it's 1:30. You want to go back? So they're like, we'll send him a message. And I guess they went through like local people, like this guy told that guy, and that guy told this guy, and eventually they got back to him.
And he showed up.
He showed up. So, and she said, next time, leave us a card so we can call you. And she said, next time you come here, maybe get your driver's number. I was like, yeah, maybe next time. But he was great. We had beach toys that we bring for our daughter, like little sand toys that we bring to every port. So that way she's got something to play with. And we left them in the bus. And he's like, hey, you left your bag of toys in the back of the bus. And I held on to it. I just assumed we were never going to see it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he held on to it.
What a testament to using the local knowledge, though, to have your own private beach.
Yeah.
Like, that is really well worth the time, invested in trying to find a local to take you somewhere cool.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, any man out there trying to propose to his wife, just go to a local and say, hey, take me to the
Tell them what you want. They got it.
What was the name of that beach one more time?
It was Fort James Beach. And then the little beach bar, I think it was called Miller's. Miller's on the beach, I think is what they
all
called
family owned. And the lady at the bar, her daughter was in school. And so, like, her daughter was getting out of school and she was like, oh, when she gets done, she can come here and play with your daughter. It was just so cool because it just really
it had a really family feel to it. Never felt unsafe. Despite us being the only people on this beach, we never felt unsafe around each other. Even though we had no idea where our driver was. Like, the lady at the bar, she's like, yeah, I know, it's Frank.
Love that. What another adventurous day. Well, we finally get through all of our ports and we have a day to relax, a day at sea. I know we've already kind of gone through entertainment, but what is like a quick rundown of like your preferred day at sea day? How did we spend this day on board the Magic?
I think we slept until like 11.
No, so we didn't. The only reason we woke up before that is because for most cruises, sea day is when they do the churro waffle. Churro Mickey Waffles.
Mickey Waffle.
And we actually got 2 Churro Mickey Waffle days on this one. They had a surprise one in the middle of the sailing for some reason, but we didn't wake up in time, so only got a few before they closed it. So we wanted to make sure we got some Churro Mickey Waffles. But we were at the tail end of breakfast. So breakfast stopped at 9:30, whatever. We were there at maybe 9.
Yeah.
And then we probably went back and took a nap after that. And Hadley went to the kids club. I think did you have a massage that day?
Yeah, I did a massage on the final day because I was like, you are 5 ports getting off at all of it in 5 days is really exhausting. So, like, if you're one of those that kind of need that relaxation between port to port,
not it.
Yeah, it's you're getting off at 8 a.m. every day, and especially if you have excursions and
5:30 was our backup board time every day. So it was long day. It was a blast, but I could have used another sea day.
Yeah,
like in the middle.
Sounds like just an absolutely magical sailing here. Well, we're going to wrap it up with your debarkation and what you did there, and then we'll circle around to a couple more questions I have about your sailing, about you guys as well. So we get back to San Juan. What was our disembarkation process like? Did we do any post-cruise days? And how did we get home?
So we did not do post-cruise day in Puerto Rico. Our flights were later on in the day that night.
6:30.
And so, it was like 6:30 at night. You get off the ship at like 8:30. So we had no idea what we were going to do. We had heard that, we had kind of planned to maybe even just go to the airport and sit. But when we got off the ship, we had found a couple that we hung out with through the entire cruise practically on board. And they were getting on this bus. So when you get off the ship in Puerto Rico, there is a travel company.
They ask you, like, hey, what are your plans? Like, are you going to the airport, or are you going to the hotel, or are you going sightseeing? So they kind of ask you leading questions.
Yep. And they will lead you to this bus and so it was like $20 a person, and they hold your bags for you on the bus and do this tour. But it was pouring down rain, and what they don't tell you is in the middle of the tour, they drop you off in the middle of Puerto Rico for sightseeing, and you're in the middle of Puerto Rico for 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours.
He told us all this,
and they take your bags.
But we're so exhausted. Like, we had just woke up and we're wiped out from the last 5 days, and he told us all this on the bus, like getting on the bus, and like the price is fine. I'm like, hey, your bags will be secured. We'll keep them on the bus. We'll come back and pick you up. It's a sightseeing tour. So we stopped at like 4 or 5 different, sites before he dropped us off in downtown San Juan. And then he stopped the bus. And of course, she's sleeping in the back of the bus. I was like, hey, we got to go. And she's like, go where? I was like, he's making us leave. And I was just like, what do you mean? She's like, it's raining. I was like, he said it's time to go. So they dropped us in San Juan, and we wanted to go get some fongo, which is like the dish of, Puerto Rico. So we asked him, like, hey, where should we go? So he pointed us in the direction. He goes, hey, I'll be back here at 1:30. Okay. So, we're standing in the middle of, Columbus Square, downtown San Juan, pouring rain, trying to figure out what do we do. So, I don't know, 3 or 4 blocks and got some lunch. And then we hit, some shops and did a little bit of shopping. I think our day would have been much more enjoyable had it not been pouring down rain. It's just really hard to get dropped off in a town that you're not familiar with when it's just pouring. But yeah, he came back up at 1:30 on the dot. He was in Columbus Square to pick us up and take us to the airport. And we got to the airport pretty early. We had a long wait for our flight. But
it helped that we both did speak Spanish, but I will say this, bring your money, because food in Puerto Rico is very expensive. So I think we paid like $130 for 2 dishes and a side of rice.
Yeah, it was a lot more expensive than we had anticipated.
And that was like in a diner, not in an actual restaurant. So bring your money.
The tour that we did took us to the airport, and then we flew home. We flew to Atlanta and then drove from Atlanta back up to South Carolina.
Awesome. Well, sounds like just an absolutely phenomenal sailing. I do have a couple questions here before we wrap up the show. One, how did this sailing overall kind of compare to some of your other sailings? You've done some of the more standard, traditional Eastern, Western type sailings. Is this a sailing you think you would come back to, or are you ready to keep trying new ones?
I loved the islands. I think if we did them again, I would maybe do just a specific island and not do the cruise that was back to back to back, or maybe do it with just my husband and I. It was a little difficult with a younger child just because, they're exhausted and you can't really say, well, we got to get off the ship because we've already bought this, Yeah. But we had a great time, and it's something that we are always going to remember. So
yeah, it was one of the cruises that was on our bucket list when we first started planning cruises, that we wanted to do a Southern Caribbean out of Puerto Rico. I think if somebody has the opportunity to do it, because it doesn't really come up, this itinerary doesn't come up a lot for DCL. I think if you have the opportunity to do it, I 100% recommend to do it. Just plan. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
But it's actually not even on the more expensive side for Disney cruises. It was a very reasonable priced cruise for everything that you get to see and do.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes this Southern Caribbean out of San Juan can be a little bit more affordable because your additional cost to entry is you have to get to San Juan.
Yeah.
And you actually alluded already to my next question, which was, how did your 6-year-old handle all of this intensive port days? Did we have any sort of malfunctions there? I feel like if you had any real big breakdowns, you probably would have mentioned it on the day. And it sounds like it all went pretty well, which is pretty incredible for a 6-year-old.
Yeah, she just loves Disney so much. Before I had her, I was like, please, Lord, let me have a kid that loves Disney. And I got a kid that I don't even know how to explain her, but she is just so excited to wake up on those Disney cruise ships. I think that it gives her adrenaline, and she's so excited to wake up and see who she's going to see. It really didn't bother her.
Yeah, she genuinely loves to travel and loves to experience other cultures. So
she was tired when she was done, but no meltdown.
Yeah, she can fall asleep anywhere. I've got a montage on our first cruise. She fell asleep at every single dinner. But on this one, she fell asleep on 2 of the buses. She fell asleep on the catamaran. So yeah, if she gets tired, she just puts herself to bed. It doesn't really matter where she's at. So yeah, she was great. No real meltdowns.
No meltdowns.
Surprisingly.
But she was done.
She said, hey, I'm ready to go back to the ship. I want to go home. But yeah, outside of that, nothing too bad. I expected much worse.
Yeah, same.
Keeping it on the ship, did you have any notable cast interactions you wanted to highlight before I take it out?
Oh, it was really, so on the other ships, I would say that we had a ton of bonds with specific cast members, but this one being a port-heavy cruise, I wouldn't say we got really close with specific cast members.
Our stateroom host was
a lot
because we're in and out of the room.
So great. As always, though, I feel like we've always had great stateroom hosts. But even our dining waiter and waitresses, our head server was the same head server that we had on our cruise in January.
And he remembered us, which is, we don't really talk to them a whole lot, so he remembered us, and hopefully he's on there again because we're on the Magic again in September.
But even we had a bond with him, but not even our wait staff. We got to know them, but it wasn't very it wasn't like other cruises, I would say, because it's so go, go, go.
Awesome. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It's hard to build those bonds when you are off the ship 5 of the 6 full days that you're on board. And you had a serving team change as well in the middle of it, which makes it all the more difficult. Well, then, my final question, we've alluded to it as well. What's next for your family?
Oh, yeah. So we're looking at a cruise in February, which is Valentine's Day.
So we haven't picked it. So there's a couple that we looked at. So there's 1 or 2 on the Wish that we've looked at, and then there's 1 or 2 on the Dream. So either one of those ships was new for us.
But we already have a cruise booked in September with actually our very first family cruise with my cousin, her husband, their 2 kids.
Yeah,
and
we planned that trip for them. So we got lucky on that one. We booked that one. It was just a 5-night Bohemian cruise. And after, 2 weeks after we booked it, they said, hey, it's now a Halloween
sailing.
So we got lucky into a theme cruise, which we've done Halloween before, and we like it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we hope you consider coming back to talk about some of those sailings as well. But Trevor, Cheltsaney, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your family's adventure on the Disney Magic for this Southern Caribbean sailing. Sounds like an absolutely phenomenal sailing. So adventurous. You got so many things in and got to see so many different things on the island. But that is going to do it for this episode. Again, thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Absolutely. Especially we'll continue to update things as we, continue our Disney travel planning.
Yeah.
So hopefully have a lot more stories now that she's doing travel planning.
Yeah.
Well, real quick, why don't you plug yourself and where our listeners can find you if they're interested in using your services?
Yeah. So if you're interested in finding me, I'm on Instagram, Travel with Cheltsaney, at Travel with Cheltsaney, Cheltsaney. That's going to be my main plug right now. And we are sharing a bunch of information just from our cruises and our experiences. So come and hang out with us. And we can't wait to come back to your podcast.
It has been absolutely lovely having you both on the show. As always, you can follow myself at MouseGen on YouTube or mouse.gen, and you can follow Christy at PackYourPixieDust and PackYourPixieDust.com. And always follow the podcast at DCLPodcast.com or DCL_podcast on Instagram. But that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast. Bye, guys.
Well, that's going to wrap up the show. Once again, we want to thank Trevor and Cheltsaney for coming on and sharing their adventure on the Disney Magic. If you're enjoying the show, we greatly appreciate you leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. We'd also like to thank our patrons who help make the show happen each and every week for us. You too can help support the show by visiting us at patreon.com/DCL Podcast. Whether you're boarding a cruise, enjoying a trip to the parks, or adventuring outside of Disney, on behalf of myself, Christy, and Steve, we want to wish you smooth sailing and safe travels. And we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast.
The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.